There we are. Excellent. You can hear me without having to shout. It's normally a couple of days into conference before I actually manage to lose my voice, but I thought I'd at least try and make sure the microphone is working. Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mark Wallace. I'm the executive editor of ConservativeHome. As you ought to know, we're very fortunate to be partnering for this event with the Joint Institute. So we're here with the Chartered Institute of Building, the Royal Institute of British Architects, the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, and the Royal Town Planning Institute for an event with a very essential focus. It's quite common, I think, in politics for people to talk about cross-departmental working, joined-up government, issues that cut across different aspects of the state and the public sector. But sometimes it's rather easier to talk about that than it is to actually focus down on what it means in practice. And we can all see around us here in Birmingham, this hive of industry, the importance of construction, the importance of being able to build the lives that people want to lead, being able to build the jobs that people can do, being able to build the future of a community, a city, an economy, and a country. And of course, to be able to do that, you need people. You need people with the relevant skills, and that means that for all the important pledges that we hear about infrastructure and housing, for all the debates we hear about the built environment, actually at the heart of that is making sure we have an education system which produces people who are able and willing and ready to go and work in that industry. And so that essentially is why we're all gathered here. We're incredibly fortunate to have Damien Hines, the Secretary of State for Education, joining us to talk about that. So without further ado from me, we're going to have a short video from the Joint Institutes, and then we're going to hear a few words from the Secretary of State.
The Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors, the Chartered Institute of Building, the Royal Institute of British Architects and the Royal Town Planning Institute represent 175,000 skilled professionals practicing the UK and beyond. Through our own means, we develop, maintain and export professional services and standards. We regulate our professionals to ensure ethical and best practice. We accredit university and training courses across the globe. And through our respective Royal Charters, we promote our professions for the advantage of the public. Most recently, we all became partners of the International Construction Measurement Standard Coalition, a worldwide group of like-minded organisations who believe the best way to support the construction sector is through the adoption of universally accepted costing measurement standards. The International Construction Measurement Standard is used by governments and companies around the world to ensure that investors have transparent, consistent and superb data and information. It is because of these common frameworks and ambitions that we formally come together to find solutions to shared concerns that affect the built and natural environments. We have a history of collaboration, particularly around the impact that Brexit could have for the UK. I have every confidence that by working together, our organisations can ensure collective views are heard by the highest decision makers in the UK. With our combined approaches to public policy, education and engagement, we will ensure the UK's current and future challenges are tackled head-on.
Our shared priorities as a group were first established and agreed shortly after the referendum result in June 2016. And since then, we've worked hard together to speak with government and officials. These priorities cover a range of issues and concerns that collectively our professionals feel are the most pressing issues for the Brexit negotiations team. Securing free trade agreements with priority markets such as the US and China, taking action to ensure that in those priority markets there is a reduction in trade barriers, such as the mutual recognition of professional qualifications. Joining up sources of trade and export funding from across the UK government, and expanding support for smaller businesses, embracing their inclusion on trade missions, ensuring that the future relationship with the EU permits the exporting of our services, and at the same time we place an emphasis on domestic policy. It's easy to view Brexit debate looking out, but we must maintain those professional standards and competency across the built environment. So, these priorities are not exhaustive, but they illustrate the similar mindsets across our professional bodies, across the built environment. Together, we are an attractive, powerful and influential sector of the UK professional services export market.
The UK's built environment sector is a global success story. Our success depends on the skills and talent of the hundreds of thousands of experienced and qualified professionals building a better built environment at home and abroad. At home, there's a clear need to get the country building high-quality homes that support the growth of real communities. Abroad, urbanisation and climate change require professional experts to take the lead and share expertise. The UK must take a new holistic approach to people and skills, developing fresh, diverse, homegrown talent. There are clear routes to achieve this. Developing apprenticeship standards, looking at routes to registration, and building on outreach programmes will help take down some of the barriers and influence more individuals towards developing a career in the built environment sector. We also need to ensure that the UK is an attractive place for international architects, surveyors, planners and contractors to live and work in. We've benefited hugely from professionals from Europe and around the world providing a wide range of skills to UK business, not least in the architecture sector, where 1/5 of our talent is from the European Union. Our organisations have been clear that we need talented European professionals contributing to the UK economy right now to feel that this country values them. An immigration system that works for people and businesses, and recognition of professional qualifications is critical. Building the next generation of homegrown talent and ensuring that the UK is open to global skills should never be treated as competing demands.
The construction industry has rarely had a higher profile in this country. Recent stories about the quality and impact of the built environment have lowered public trust in our sector. We believe it's the duty of the sector's professional bodies to join together. Our organisations have always made the case for professionalism. We need to take it further and inject the moral compass. Our values of putting the public at the heart of our services and supporting others within the industry to do so are reflected by our members and by the working collaborations and partnerships we have formed. We want to help improve the overall culture of the land and property industries, driving up standards and delivering quality. There is a clear and present skills shortage that cuts across all our sectors, which will only become more acute in the next few years as we approach the retirement cliff edge. Alongside our work across our respective industry sectors to promote quality and professionalism, we are promoting the industry itself with clear routes into and pathways to professional qualifications. We see this as an important strand of work sitting alongside the drive to raise standards and quality. Our industry is about improving people's quality of lives, and our professions are committed to doing that.
Well, I think quite a good illustration there from the leaders of the Joint Institutes about quite the complexity of some of these issues. But I hope you'll join me, ladies and gentlemen, in a warm round of applause to welcome our guest this evening, the Secretary of State, for lending us his time and now his thoughts.
Thank you very much. My dad always used to say, be careful if they applaud before you start in case they don't do it again when you finish. But I just want to thank the Joint Institutes for supporting this event and for being at the party conference. It's very good actually to see professional bodies like yours working together on these very important issues. And as was rightly said in the film, of course, the work that you're engaged in hits directly on some of the absolute highest priorities for our country, in particular around housing and around infrastructure. And as was said, you know, when we look around Birmingham, you see the evidence of that. Unfortunately, also the closed roads that sometimes come with it, which might have held some of you up on the way here. But it is absolutely central to the future of our country. I also mentioned in the film, 175,000 highly skilled professionals represented by these institutes, and this is really at the high-skilled, highest value-added end of our economy, and so important. I know also there's a recruitment challenge for the industry more widely for construction, partly because of the demographic of the existing workforce. My last job before being Education Secretary was Employment Minister, and so I'm keenly aware of these matters. And so I very much welcome hearing about the industry working harder on outreach and reaching deeper into communities to secure greater diversity in the workforce. But I was just going to say a word or two about skills and apprenticeships, if I may. And we're embarked on an ambitious programme of reform in technical and vocational education and training. And I'm just back from Germany, as it happens, and so I thought I might structure my remarks just around my observations, my comparisons of looking at that country, Germany, widely regarded by many as one of the leading technical and vocational systems in the world compared to our own. Of course, the first thing you learn when you go to look at a best practice competitor is don't try and copy everything, because not everything is always necessarily better. And in fact, one thing I learned in Germany was actually the system there is quite complex in terms of the different routes for young people and so on. It's important to have a flexible system which has mid-career opportunities to change, to build up your skills and so on. But perhaps the biggest thing I picked up from Germany to think about was, we talk about parity of esteem and how our problem in this country is trying to generate parity of esteem for young people to make them think about vocational routes instead of academic. And when you speak to the German equivalent of the CBI, they say, the problem we have here in Germany, no parity of esteem. The parents want the kids to go to university. So in fact, this is a challenge in multiple countries at the same time. But there were a number of specific things which you can observe in a country like Germany, and this is true also of others. The first is about getting them young. And there's a word, which this was a genuinely new word, new learning for me. I'm going to see who knows what this means. Schnupperpraktikum. Any volunteers from the audience? Any German? Have we got any German speakers? Any Austrians? Swiss? Okay, so Schnupperpraktikum, which of course is all one word, and it's a real word, means, literally it means a sniff of practice, or what we would call a taster. So from quite early on in the German school system, having opportunities for young people to look at the sorts of industries that they might want to go into and see what whets their appetite, because obviously for different young people, different things appeal. But in spite of the desire to whet young people's appetite for different options early on, another thing that they do in Germany, or rather they don't do, is specialise too early. So actually you have the vast majority of young people doing what we would call the English baccalaureate, up to at least the core academic subjects, up to at least the age of 16, and actually in many cases beyond that as well. They also have a path which stretches you. So in whatever industry that you're in, obviously you have your basic apprenticeship qualification, but there's always something else to aim at until you finally reach the level of Meister in that industry, in that sector, where then you become the person who can hand on the skills and bring on the next generation. And that's closely connected to my final observation, which is about whole society commitment. So you really get a sense that everybody in society is committed to this so-called dual system. And industry is incredibly closely involved at all levels and at all stages. Making sure there are work placement opportunities available, actually marking some of the work, and so on and so on. So we are, as I said, embarked on an ambitious programme of reform, bringing up the quality level of apprenticeships, converting from the old frameworks to new standards. We have T-levels coming on, which will be with us, the first few subjects and the first colleges from 2020, and one of those T-levels, of course, is in the area of construction and some of the trades closely connected with the joint institutes. Now, T-levels will be a largely college-based qualification, but with more hours of college-based learning than normally, traditionally we have for vocational qualifications, moving up from 600 hours to 900 hours, so a really quite substantial increase, and also involving a substantial industrial placement to make sure that the young person doing a T-level between age 16 and 18 has the opportunity to really learn from the reality of the workplace. We're also going to be looking at the level above that, so beyond 18, the so-called level 4 and 5 qualifications, where in our country we have a relatively low level of people being educated or trained to those levels. We have quite high levels to level 3, which is A level, and we have high levels being qualified to level 6, which would be a degree. But levels 4 and 5, the two in the middle, we have relatively fewer, and actually that is in those areas that many of the vacancies in the economy at sort of technician level exist. And then finally, because we live in a more rapidly changing world than ever before, we also have to do more than ever before to make sure there are opportunities to retrain later in life, to start a new career. And so we're working closely with the CBI and the TUC on a proper full national retraining scheme. So there is a great deal going on. Construction and the Joint Institute's work is incredibly important to all this. It's absolutely essential. So I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here, to say thank you to the Joint Institutes in person. And I'm very happy, Mark, to take a couple of questions.
Thank you very much. That's the kind of thing a journalist always likes to hear. I'm going to selfishly kick off myself, if the audience will forgive me. You mentioned, Damien, the T-level route on construction just now. As you'll probably be aware, there are some questions, I think, in some parts of the industry about whether the requirement for level 2 on maths and English might serve as a deterrent to some potential pupils or students on the basis of perhaps they might feel they want to go through the more traditional vocational route. Is there a way to bridge that gap? Do you feel it's something that's kind of built into the system at present?
Well, I mean, we know that maths and English, both of them, are exceptionally important. And actually to have options later in life to do other things, and, you know, people may need to do other things later in life for all sorts of different reasons. They're even more important. I mean, also, if you're going to be in construction trades, you are probably going to end up using aspects of maths and English in various forms, from things directly connected to the trade and what you're doing through to, if you're self-employed, to billing and accounting and tax returns and all the rest of it. I just come back to my German experience for a moment, and actually the same was true when we went to look at the Netherlands, actually continuing with maths and English, and so as well as German, so they're doing German and maths and English. Continuing with that as they're doing their apprenticeship is a central part of what happens there.
Interesting. Thank you very much. And on a separate topic, on the question of equalities and diversity, there is particularly, say, an ethnicity pay gap that affects the sector, as well as an opportunity gap. Is there a point at which the education system can help to contribute to resolving that issue early on? Would you say?
Well, the education system has to make sure that everybody of whatever background has this full range of opportunities open to them. And actually, there's a danger of falling into a trap. I'm not saying you would do this. You wouldn't do this, Mark. But there's a danger of falling into a trap of oversimplifying this issue. And in fact, different ethnic groups actually have quite a range of educational outcomes, some of which are considerably higher than for white children. But we do need to make sure that in all the different sectors, all the different employment opportunities, and there is still an employment gap, as you mentioned, it's absolutely vital that those are narrowed and closed altogether. I think employers play a really important part in that, to make sure that there is outreach, to make sure that if you're looking at or considering an industry in which you don't see other people who look like you, that there is extra effort made to make sure that that option is presented and is made to feel welcoming. But it's something we do together.
And I'm going to, if you hang on to your microphone, I'll pass mine to my colleague. Okay. And if there are any questions from the audience, would anybody like to ask a question?
I'm Bradley from Cardiff, and I'm just curious because with the introduction of the T-levels, what can be done to ensure that they're not just seen as something that young men do rather than young women? What can be done to encourage, young women to take up the T-levels, because there is a bit of a risk of them being seen as just something that guys do, and really limiting what women can actually do.
Well, Bradley, that's a good point. I mean, I think actually the risk is probably more around subject areas than T-levels versus not, and there is a big gender imbalance in different qualifications now. So, depending on whether you're talking about care-based qualifications and occupations or construction, for example, you get quite a difference. I don't think that's something you can fix totally overnight, but you just have to keep working at it and working at it and working at it. And I think actually this industry, the construction industry, has done some good work. But there's still quite a long way to go. And so it requires a sustained effort of demonstrating, if you're talking about doing a T-level in construction, that first of all, there's a whole range of different occupations and professions within that. You don't have to be attracted to all of them to be attracted to the industry. You have to be attracted to the one that's right for you. I might say, by the way, a similar sort of set of questions comes up sometimes with older people. So in this sector, there is quite an issue, is obviously with people being sort of towards let's say in the second half of their careers, and thinking about job design and work design to make sure that as many of those skills can be retained as possible is also a really important imperative.
And there's another hand. Yes, the gentleman here.
Hi there, Conor McBain, Heart of London Business Alliance. We represent 600 businesses and property owners across London's West End. One of the things that our businesses complain about quite a lot is the apprenticeship levy and how inflexible it is. They often just see it as a tax rather than something that can actually benefit their business. So do you have plans to reform it in the next budget perhaps? And yeah, basically, are there any plans afoot?
So look, what the apprenticeship levy does is it deals with the free rider problem, which we have had historically in this country. Some companies, I'm sure yours and those that you represent, have always been very good investors in people, and that has a great benefit for the economy as a whole. But others haven't. And that can be a problem for those who have, because they can then be at a competitive disadvantage. The apprenticeship levy makes sure that all sizable businesses are contributing to apprenticeships and therefore to the upskilling of the nation. And the money that doesn't, you don't draw down out of your own account is there for other companies who are not levy payers to be able to use for apprenticeships. So it does get used for upskilling. We always keep everything, all these things under review, and speak closely to business organisations, sector organisations, and others to make sure that things are working as well as they can. And we've already made some changes, by the way, on the apprenticeship levy in response to some of that feedback. But the core principle that everybody over a certain size pays into this fund. You can draw down the funds, but the other funds are there for non-levy paying employers to invest and to be critically in transferable qualifications with a minimum length of time. The minimum is only a year, with a minimum off-the-job training element. The minimum is only 20%. That principle, I think, is a good one.
I think we have time for one more question. In an event on diversity, with a male intro and a male guest and 2 male questions, perhaps a female member of the audience might like to ask a question.
Hi, Victoria Hills, Royal Town Planning Institute. Sorry, I was on the film earlier, but if there are no other women that want to ask. So we've been working very closely with an organisation called the Institute for Apprenticeships. It's now 2 years in. Just wanted to hear your take on how well you think they're getting on and how they may work better with some of the professional bodies going forward.
Well, thank you for that. As you rightly say, the IFA, the Institute for Apprenticeships, is a relatively new body. There's a lot of development going on at the moment in the conversion, or not the conversion, but the creation of employer-led standards rather than frameworks, and that is a big process. There's no getting away from that. It's a big volume of stuff to get through. The process has accelerated. The IFA have brought in this faster and better process, but we need to keep monitoring that and make sure it's working as well as it can. So operationally, I'm absolutely alive to making sure things are working well. But similar to my answer to the previous question, I think the principle of having this independent body, which is overseeing the quality of these standards, I think that principle is a good one. But obviously, we're still in the relatively early stages of operation, and I've no doubt that any of these things could evolve in future.
Well, plenty of food for thought there, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you'll join me in saying thank you. A round of applause at the end of the contribution as well as the start. Thank you, Damien, for being generous with your time and your thoughts. And thank you to the Joint Institutes as well as to my colleagues at ConservativeHome for making this event possible. And thank you to all of you as well.